Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. So today we are going to discuss about chapter number 17. But before we proceed to the chapter number 17, we will do a quick revision of chapter number 16 by solving some questions, practical examples on chapter number 16 so that you guys can have a confidence or understanding of the chapter number 16. Okay. So it will serve as a quick recap, and those who have already read the chapter, it will be very good exercise for you as a quick recap about the chapter. Okay, so let's solve some questions on chapter number 16, and then we will proceed to the chapter number 17. So when we will discuss the questions of chapter number 16, I expect you guys to answer. Okay, because then only you will be able to understand the questions in much more detail. Okay, so please try to answer as much as you can. Okay, and during the session, if you have any doubts pertaining to any of the area, you can ask freely. That is perfectly fine. Post your doubt, unmute yourself, ask the doubt, no issues. Okay, so ask as much as doubts as you can. Okay, now let's talk about chapter number 16's question. Okay, so let's read this first question for today. XYZ Limited, a private company incorporated in India during the financial year 22-23, it's reported a turnover of 195 CR, outstanding loans from financial institution totaling to 98 CR. During, however, in quarter one of the financial year 23-24, the company secured a significant new contract, boosting its projected annual turnover to 220 CR. Simultaneously, it obtained an additional loan of 15 CR to support this expansion. The company's management contended that since the threshold limit specified in the section 138 of the Companies Act 2013 were not met in the preceding financial year, the appointment of an internal auditor is not mandatory for the current financial year. As an external auditor, analyze this scenario and provide a detailed opinion on the applicability of the internal audit provisions to XYZ Limited for the financial year 23-24. Consider the company's current financial position, projected growth, and any relevant legal provision. So what you guys have to do is, I'll give you a minute to read the question, read it again, and then try to answer like whether the provisions of internal audit are applicable to this company or not. Okay, so please read the question and then try to answer. Okay. Now tell me whether the provisions of internal audit are applicable to this company. What do you think, guys? What are the provisions basically? If you think about the provisions, what are the provisions? Like which section provides the applicability of the internal audit in case of the Companies Act? Can anyone tell me that? If you are thinking about section 138, yes, you are correct. Section 138 is the section basically which talks about applicability of the internal audit to the companies. Yes, that is the section 138, which says that class or classes of companies, okay, class or classes of company needs to comply with this particular provision, and they are required to appoint internal auditor. Yes or no? Now we have already discussed like internal auditor can be chartered accountant, cost of work account, or any other professional, so we will not go in that particular detail. Now the second question comes is, which is the other provision that talks about whether the internal audit function, whether the company falls under the purview of section 138 or not? Anyone? apart from section 138, which is the other provision which talks about the applicability of the section 138. No, I'll tell you. So it is the Rule 13 of Companies Accounts Rule 2014. Yes or no? Companies Accounts Rule 2014's, your Rule 13 is there, which talks about applicability of, they provide the list that to whom the internal audit function is applicable. Now, I will suggest read the question for a minute once again and check whether the company falls under the purview of Rule 13 or not. Now, read the question, take a minute, and then try to answer. Okay, now tell me whether the company will fall under the Rule 13 or not. Yes, no? Yes or no? Anyone? It is not that difficult. We have discussed yesterday what are the criteria which are there in the
Sir,
Rule 13.
this
Yes.
is a private company एंड प्राइवेट कंपनी के लिए हम टू क्राइटेरिया देखते हैं. एक तो टर्नओवर उसका 200 CR से ज्यादा हो और आउटस्टैंडिंग और लोन और बोरिंग जो है उसकी 100 करोड़ से ज्यादा हो. तो यहाँ पे 195 करोड़ है तो 0.1 भी एप्लीकेबल नहीं हो रहा. एंड द सेकंड इज लोन इज 15 करोड़ ओनली. तो दोनों ही कंडीशन में एप्लीकेबल नहीं हो रहा. बट जो क्वार्टर 1 के लिए जो फोरकास्ट कर रहा है वो 220 करोड़ हो जाएगा. दैट टाइम वी कैन से कि हमारा जो इंटरनल ऑडिट का प्रोविजन है एप्लीकेबल तब होगा, बट अभी नहीं है.
Okay. So for financial year, basically what we are talking about here, for financial year 23-24, you need to consider the applicability. Now, for financial year 22-23, turnover is this much and the financial loans are this much.
तो फाइनेंशियल ईयर 23-24 के लिए भी प्रीवियस ईयर फाइनेंशियल ईयर देखेंगे ना, तो प्रीवियस ईयर फाइनेंशियल ईयर के अकॉर्डिंग तो एप्लीकेबल नहीं है.
Absolutely correct. Yes. Very good. Basically, if we go back, whatever we have discussed till now, what we discussed is, this was the part we discussed for the private limited company, either it's a turnover or it's outstanding loan. And for the turnover, it's a turnover which is there for the preceding year. Okay. So preceding year's turnover that we are required to see for the applicability in the next year. Then only we will be able to comment, okay, whether it is falling under the Rule 13 or not. So when I talk about turnover, turnover is of preceding financial year. And when I talk about the outstanding loans, it's to be during the preceding financial year at any point in time during during the preceding financial year. Again, the conditions are with respect to the preceding financial year whenever we check the conditions in case of internal audit. So, yes.
ये जो आपने लाइन बोली एट एनी पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, अगर हमारा लोन 100 करोड़ पहुंचता है एंड नेक्स्ट मंथ ही हमारा लोन 90 करोड़ आ जाता है, देन फिर भी एप्लीकेबल होगा ना, क्योंकि एट एनी पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, राइट?
Yes, at any point in time during the preceding financial year. So if once it crosses the limit, it is done. It has crossed the limit now. Although later on you bring it back down or you reduce the loan amount, doesn't matter. it has crossed it, it has exceeded the limit threshold, and the provision says that at any point in time, so that means it becomes now applicable to you. So in the current case, the turnover is 195 CR, which is below your 200 CR threshold. Number two, your outstanding loans from financial institutions is 98 CR, and the limit is 100 CR at any point in time during previous year. Now, one thing is very, very important. Like, a lot of students get confused. Simultaneously, it obtained an additional 15 CR loan to support the expansion. Student might say, no, 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 sir. This is an additional loan which has been taken. Okay, this is the additional loan which has been taken. But the point here is this has been taken in the next year, in financial year 23-24. But when I'm checking the conditions, I need to check the conditions with respect to the previous year. Okay. So if I ask you the applicability for the financial year 24-25, then you will see the data of 23-24. But if I ask the applicability of the 23-24, you will see the data of 22-23. Okay. If I have to summarize, let's say financial year 22-23, financial year 23-24, and financial year 24-25. Okay. Now, if I have to see the applicability of financial year 23-24, I have to go back 1 year and I have to see the data of financial year 22-23. Now, this loan, although they have a 98 CR in 22-23, additional 15 means it exceeded the 100 CR, but this is in 23-24. So when I will check for 24-25, I'll go a year back. I'll check the data over here. Means in 24-25, there could be a applicability of internal audit based on the numbers that are available, but 23-24, it is not. 24-25, it will be. Are you getting the point? That's why I need to check preceding financial year data to validate the applicability. Clear with this?
Yes.
Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? Okay. If no doubts, let us go through some. I have prepared a list of people, list of persons who can be appointed as an internal auditor. Just you need to go through that list and tell me which one can be appointed and which one cannot be appointed as an internal auditor. So there are total 8 person in that list. Okay. So first one is in Mr. X, a practicing chartered accountant. Mr. Y, a graduate from IIM. Mr. O, undergraduate but with 20 years of experience. Mr. Z, a commerce graduate but who is a son of CEO. Mr. M, he is already working with an LMN Limited as the Chief Compliance Officer. Mr. B, statutory auditor of the company, and Mr. C, statutory auditor of subsidiary of LMN Limited. So for LMN listed entity, who can be internal auditor and who cannot be internal auditor out of these 8 person?
सर फर्स्ट हो सकता है, सेकंड नहीं होगा, थर्ड जो है वो भी नहीं होगा, एंड फोर्थ जो है वो भी नहीं होगा, एंड फिफ्थ जो है वो भी नहीं होगा, सिक्स्थ भी नहीं होगा, एंड सेवेंथ भी नहीं होगा. ओनली फर्स्ट होगा एंड रिमेनिंग्स आर नॉट.
Okay, so you are saying only first.
यस सर, ग्रेजुएट नहीं होता, अंडर ग्रेजुएट नहीं होता, ग्रेजुएट नहीं होगा, और सन है उससे कोई रिस्पेक्ट नहीं, मतलब कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिटर नहीं हो सकता सेक्शन 144 के अकॉर्डिंग.
Okay. Any other answers? Any other answer, guys?
सर एक डाउट है बस 6 को लेके, क्योंकि रीजन है इसकी लॉ में लिखा है, मतलब लॉ मतलब जो टर्म्स है उसमें ये लिखा है कि कोई अदर प्रोफेशन जो कि बोर्ड ने डिसाइड कर रखा हो वो भी हम कंसिडर कर सकते हैं। बाकी और किसी में भी कोई डाउट नहीं लग रहा मुझे।
Okay, okay. See, when it comes to internal auditor, okay, now internal auditors applicability, like who can be an internal auditor basically, is decided under section 138. If you read section 138 of the Companies Act, what it says that who shall be either a charter accountant or a cost accountant or such other professional as may be decided by board to conduct internal audit function and activities of the company. Such other professional that is not defined means anyone can be appointed as an internal auditor. Okay, because if I talk about other such professional as may be decided by board, so board has an authority to decide whom to appoint internal auditor. It does not restrict that okay they cannot appoint a graduate from IIM. It does not restrict an undergraduate, a commerce graduate. It says such other professional as may be decided by board. So board gets the power to decide who can be appointed as an internal auditor. Okay.
That's why I told you सन ऑफ सीईओ को हमने इसीलिए थोड़ा सा डाउट था, क्योंकि रीजन है इसकी बोर्ड कंट्रोलिंग पावर इज सीईओ के पास होती है तो उसने वो इन्फ्लुएंस कर सकता है।
Yes, it can be. See, again, that's the point here is when it comes to the appointment of internal auditors at times are employees of the company. If a company is a closely held company, or the company, it's kind of a company where it's more of the every member of the management is part of the what you say the promoter family. You will see a scenario that the internal auditors or chief internal auditor is also part of that promoter family. So it's not something that it restricts that they cannot be appointed. Yes, internal auditors can be related parties. That is perfectly fine. Now the only point comes is in the case of listed entity is the SEBI LODR. Again, SEBI LODR does not specifically restrict any person from being appointed as the internal auditor. What it does is, it does, place a requirement on the audit committee to review the appointment, removal, terms of remuneration of chief internal auditor. It does not say that what it should be, rather it delegates the authority to the audit committee. Now, if tomorrow audit committee thinks that no, he can be appointed as an internal auditor, perfectly fine, not an issue. So as of today, you can say that the internal auditor with respect to the listed entity or a private limited company to whom section 130 is applicable can be anyone. But the last two options cannot be. Reason because of your section 144 that we discussed on that day. Section 144 restricts the statutory auditors. Okay, specifically they restrict the statutory auditors from being appointed as an to provide any other service as an internal auditor. Okay, that's why 7-8 cannot be. But apart from 7-8, rest can be appointed.
सर 16.7 पे आप एक बार आएंगे?
Yes, just a minute.
सर इंटरनल ऑडिटर इंडिपेंडेंट नहीं होता ना?
Where?
सर आप मैं पहले आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछ रही हूँ, इंटरनल ऑडिटर इंडिपेंडेंट होता है कि नहीं होता है?
See, that's why not necessarily internal auditor may enjoy independence. That's why we have a provision in SA 610 where we have to evaluate the independence of the internal auditor. Remember, in yesterday's session also, we were discussing about the standards on internal auditing, where we were discussing that we need to evaluate whether he is the independent or not, based on the organizational status, based on the objectivity and his
सर
competence.
एक्चुअली इसमें लिखा है एट ऑल टाइम्स, मतलब हमेशा ही
It
होना
is
चाहिए ना।
suggested. That's why I'm
और
saying.
मस्ट भी है यहाँ पे, राइट। अब लास्ट लाइन को देखेंगे, एट ऑल टाइम्स द
At all times,
ऑडिटर
internal
enjoy।
auditor must enjoy independent status. So this is a suggestive, like how organization should structure internal audit function basically.
Okay. And sir, come to the 16.28 paper.
Yeah.
SIA is mandatory or recommendatory?
SIA are applicable to the charter accountants issued by
सर
the
इंटरनल ऑडिटर्स के लिए है ना, बट वो भी तो वो मैंडेटरी है कि रिकमेंडरी है?
See, again, I'll say SIA is applicable to charter accountants which is issued by the ICAI. Okay. Now, if a person he is not a charter accountant, will he follow SIA?
नो सर, तो आंसर क्या होगा?
No, no. In that case,
मतलब
it
हम
is there for the charter accountant. Again, I am saying that is the answer. If a person is a charter accountant, he has to comply with the SIA. That is there. But if a person who is appointed as an internal auditor who is not a chartered accountant, he may not comply.
ओके, मैं क्योंकि लास्ट लाइन लिखी है स्टैंडर्ड ऑन इंटरनल ऑडिट पूरा पढ़ लिया, उसके बाद लास्ट में लिख के देते हैं स्टैंडर्ड इंटरनल ऑडिट आर रिकमेंडरी इन नेचर।
Yes.
मैंने मैंने कहा कि ये अगर ये हो गया तो फिर फायदा क्या था अलग बनाने का?
See, as of today, I'll tell you the problem here is how and see why standards become mandatory. Some standards are not mandatory. Understand why SA is mandatory for auditors? Why SA is mandatory?
सर एक जैसे लाइक अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड होते हैं, वैसे ही स्टैंडर्ड ऑन ऑडिटिंग होते हैं कि एक फिक्स फॉर्मेट होता है, फिक्स गाइडलाइंस होती है, ताकि एक सबके साथ में सिमेट्री बनी रहे, सारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में सिमेट्री बनी रहे उन ट्रांजेक्शन्स की, उन चीजों की, और उसे हम लोग जज कर सके, हम इवेल्युएट कर सके ट्रू कितना वो करेक्टली रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं, कहाँ पे उनकी उनका उनको कंपेयर कर सके, बहुत
No,
सारी
no.
चीजें हैं।
See, let's say tomorrow I'm going to audit a company under company set. Why I have to follow standards on auditing? Simple question.
Issued by ICAI.
Not only issued by ICAI. It's not only about issued by ICAI. That is the thing that we need to understand. See, every requirement comes from a particular place. Every requirement. Okay. Now, when it says standards on auditing, basically it's given in the Companies Act that the auditor has to comply with the standard issued by the ICAI. So it is there in the Companies Act itself that they have to comply. It's not, what you say, even for the, like accounting standards. There's a section 133 which says you need to follow accounting standards. Same way, you have auditing standards. Over there, like if you see the section 132 under Companies Act, it says that, the central government may by notification, provide like which are the accounting and auditing standards that are required to be followed. So over there, they have classified that, okay, these are the standards, auditing standards, which are required to be followed during the audit by a statutory auditor. That's why for the companies, we have to follow. For the non-corporate entities, we follow because it is required by the ICAI. It is given that as in, that whenever we are delivering assurance services, we have to comply. But remember, everywhere there was a point when we were discussing, let's say, SA700 series, we were discussing, let's say if in some cases we have to issue an opinion or we have to issue a report that does not comply with the minimum requirement of the SA700. At that point in time, we should not be mentioning in our report that we have complied with these standards or this report has been prepared as per the SA800 or 700. Same was in other standards also, like special cases that we saw. Remember something like that?
Yes, sir.
So the reason comes is that In those cases, there could be some different law or regulation into the play which may require me to issue a different kind of report in a different format. I have to follow that. And if that is in conflict with the auditing standards, I cannot write in my audit report that I have followed the auditing standard. But in case of companies, it is not the scenario, because in the Companies Act under section 132, it is specifically given that you have to follow auditing standard issued by the ICAI.
ओके सर. सर वन मोर थिंग हमें समझ में नहीं आई. 16.23 पे determining whether in which area and to what extent internal auditor can be used to provide direct assistance. Although आपने ये 610 में कवर किया था, बट ये जो पॉइंट्स यहाँ लिखे हैं वो मुझे थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूज कर गए. आप एक बार देखेंगे?
Just a minute. This one?
ये जो चार्ट नीचे जो चार्ट.
Yeah. Okay. So what it says that determine. Yes.
ये नहीं है. इसके नीचे जो चार्ट बना हुआ है can be.
This one?
हाँ, this one. Yes sir.
Okay. No issues. So,
सर बट ये चार्ट आपका कुछ और है और मेरे पास कुछ और है. इसके भी नीचे है सर, इसके भी नीचे है. नीचे एक और चार्ट है. हाँ, that's one. This one. 7.3.
This one?
Yes sir.
Okay. Basically, what it says that where I can use the work of internal auditor in case of direct assistance. It is similar that what we are seeing in SA 610. Now, usually if the area is kind of, where I need more planning, it's more riskier area, okay, or more judgment involved, at those areas, I should not be using the work of internal auditor. But the areas where, the risk is not that much, the area where the estimations are not that much, or the risk of material misstatement is not there, over there, I can consider using the, the work of internal auditor as a direct assistant. Now, if you see this particular point, shall not use, okay. In these areas, I shall not use the internal auditor, which is significant judgments, higher assessed risk areas, or you can say, where I need to report the work to those charges governance to avoid the conflict of interest related to the SA 610, like, whatever areas we have decided in SA 610 or discussed. Where I can use, basically, I can use something with respect to, gathering audit procedures, if it is not of high risk of material misstatement, evaluation of audit evidence gather. Evaluation is kind of an analysis that we do once we gather the audit evidence. Assess risk of material misstatement, but it is not higher one. Higher is given over here. Okay. So over there, I may consider using the work of internal auditor, but to the limited extent. Again, whenever I will be using the work of internal auditor, I need to make sure that I am the only one responsible as an external auditor. Okay, internal auditor will not be responsible. External auditor is responsible for whatever work it is being there.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other doubts? So earlier I was saying that that section 132 of the Companies Act says that you need to follow auditing standard. Similarly, there is no section in any of the, either Companies Act or SEBI LODR, which says that you need to follow these internal auditing standards. That's why you say a line that they are recommendatory in the nature. Clear?
सेम प्रिंसिपल हम स्टैंडर्ड ऑन ऑडिटिंग पे भी कह सकते हैं.
सेम प्रिंसिपल लाइक
मतलब लाइक हमें कंपनीज एक्ट में रिकमेंड कंपल्सरी है, मैंडेटरी है, राइट. अदर एक्ट्स लाइक पार्टनरशिप या कोई भी और दूसरी कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस होती है, वहां ऐसा कोई लाइन पब्लिश्ड नहीं है या कोई भी एक्ट में नहीं है कि उसमें मैंडेटरी है. तो वहां पे
I'll give you an example. In some states, see, there is a Cooperative Housing Society Act in a separate states. Okay, so for example, Maharashtra has a Maharashtra Cooperative Society Housing Act. Gujarat has a Gujarat one. Every state has a different Cooperative Housing Society Act. Okay.
Yes,
now,
sir.
what happens is, in that act, there is a requirement for the audit. Now, if you see that requirement over there, not only chartered accountants, but there are the central government auditors also who can audit the cooperative societies. Now, the question comes is, when a central government auditor who is not a chartered accountant will audit the cooperative society, will he follow the auditing standard?
सर वापस रिपीट करेंगे, एक्चुअली ब्रेक हो गई थी आपकी वॉइस.
So, there is a cooperative housing society. Okay. Now, cooperative housing society act is there in every state, which says that housing societies are required to be audited either by chartered accountant in practice or by central government auditors. Central government auditors may not be a chartered accountant. In some states, there is a requirement that the central government auditor may not be a chartered accountant. Okay. So a person who is not a chartered accountant can audit the cooperative housing society by giving a separate exam, and there is a procedure given. Now, if that person is auditing a cooperative housing society, will he follow the auditing standards?
Not compulsory.
Exactly. That's it. He will follow the guidance which is being issued by the cooperative registrar or the authority under that particular act. If that authority has issued some auditing requirements, the person who is not the chartered accountant and government auditor, he will follow that guidelines. He may not follow the auditing standard.
Okay, sir.
That's why I'll also show you one more area. In case of PSU audits, if a PSU is a company, we will follow auditing standards, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
But if it is a government department, at the time of financial audit, will you follow auditing standards? If yes, then our report you saw was different than SA 700 report.
So, where is prescribed format given in the in that department, yeah, that organization, that law?
Over there, in case of PSU audits, let's say in case of a department, in case of something different is there, which is not falling under the Companies Act, CNAG has already prescribed their auditing requirements, auditing principles. So CNAG has already given auditing regulations which are required to be followed.
सर फॉर्म 150 में शायद उनका प्रेस्क्राइब फॉर्म होता है 150 या फिर आर्टिकल 150 या 151 में आपने जब पढ़ा था.
Article 151 gives the power or authority to the CNAG, and under that power and authority there is a, remember there was a particular act that we were talking about, DPC Act.
Yes, sir. And
DPC Act again prescribes other powers to the CNAG that they can issue these kind of directions, and CNAG has issued. So there is a basically regulations on audit and accounts which are of 2020, okay, which are published under section 23 of CNAG DPC Act, which prescribes like how and what audit is, and a lot of things are there in that.
Yes, sir.
That's why we need to understand from where the requirement is coming.
Got it, sir.
Any other doubt, guys? Any doubt? No? Okay. If no doubt, I think we are clear with this. Who can be internal auditor, who cannot be internal auditor. Okay. Now let's proceed to one more question. Again, very good question. It will, give us a good understanding about the topic. MNO Private Limited, a family-owned business, recently crossed 200 crore turnover threshold for the first time in financial year 22-23. To fulfill their internal audit requirement under Section 138 of the Companies Act 2013, the company's board of directors is considering appointing one of its senior employees as a qualified cost accountant as an internal auditor. However, this employee is not a member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Analyze the situation in context with the Rule 13 of the Companies Accounts Rule 2014, Is the proposed appointment of the employee as an internal auditor valid and compliant? Provide a detailed explanation, your reasoning, and refer to the specific provision.
Sir, valid है.
Anyone, any other answer? Any other answer, guys? No? Yes, it's correct. It's valid, not an issue. Yeah. He can be appointed if they want to appoint, but the only question here is that in the financial year they cross this limit, and if they are appointing for the subsequent year, perfectly fine. So financial year 22-23 they have crossed the limit. Now if they want to appoint for the subsequent year, perfectly fine. My question to you guys is, can company appoint internal auditor for financial year 22-23?
No, sir.
Can company appoint internal auditor for financial year 22-23?
No, sir.
Anyone else with a different answer?
No, sir, the company cannot, as we have to check the last year's data for appointment of internal auditor.
Yeah.
So
सर यहाँ लिखा है फर्स्ट टाइम, तो दैट मीन्स लास्ट टाइम तो हुआ ही नहीं, फर्स्ट टाइम ही है इसका ना.
Yep. No? Okay. I hope everyone is on the similar line. Everyone is saying no. Okay. So basically, in this case, the answer is yes, they can. Section 138 provides that in these cases it becomes mandatory to appoint. It does not restrict you to appoint when it is not the conditions are not there. So understand one thing, section 138 is a mandatory requirement to be complied when there is a threshold or there is, the conditions are met. It does not restrict in any way to appoint an internal auditor when the thresholds are not there. For example, if tomorrow I feel no, my company needs an internal auditor, although they don't have that much turnover, but because of the nature of the business, I want to have an internal auditor. Why Companies Act will stop me? So mandatory case is given, perfectly fine. But if I want to comply it voluntarily, what is the problem in that? Is there any provision in the Companies Act which stops you to do a voluntary compliance? Answer is no. Then company can appoint, perfectly fine. But there are certain scenarios where they have to do mandatory. Voluntary, perfectly fine. Yes, Manish, absolutely correct. Not mandatory. Mandatory once you cross the threshold. And it does not stop you from complying voluntarily.
सर हमने तो वॉलंटरी सोचा ही नहीं, हमने तो 138 ही सोचा.
So yeah, these are the things that may come in. Let's say company doesn't have that much turnover, but they are planning, they are startup and they want to raise funds in the market. They are planning to go public. So they cannot appoint internal auditor after becoming public. It doesn't, reflects good on the part of the governance, corporate governance. So most of the companies go and appoint the internal auditor. They have already these functions before they go to, raising of funds. So voluntary compliance can be there, perfectly fine. Clear?
Yes, sir, clear.
Okay. Again, one good question that we will discuss, and this will definitely will clear the provisions. Element Limited with a company with a paid up share capital of 45 crores and outstanding loans of 90 crores as of 31st March 2023. During financial year 23-24, the company plans to raise additional capital through right issues, which is expected to increase its paid up capital to 55 crores. In the light of this upcoming change in the company's share capital, assess whether L&M Limited is required to appoint internal auditor for financial year 23-24. So what do you think? Are they required to appoint internal auditor? Yes or no? Quickly, guys. Are they required to appoint?
Sir, not mandatory.
Okay. Anyone else with a different answer?
सर मैं इसमें कंफ्यूज हो रही हूँ। एक तो ये एलिमेंट लिमिटेड है, पब्लिक लिमिटेड है, तो इसको लिस्टेड कंसीडर कर सकते हैं क्या?
Until and unless the details are not given, it will not be listed.
ओके.
Yeah. Anyone?
सर नो थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट टच, तो नॉट मैंडेटरी इसीलिए बोला कि क्योंकि ना तो 50 करोड़ हो रहे हैं ना 100 करोड़ हो रहे हैं, और नेक्स्ट ईयर 55 करोड़ होंगे आफ्टर राइट इशू, दैट टाइम हम अगले साल करेंगे.
Yes.
I have only the same answer, but your answer.
No. So again, see, in this particular case, what is happening is the company has this share capital, okay, of 45 CR, an outstanding loan of 90 CR. Now, company basically is, planning to increase the right through right issue. Now, as of today, do they have that threshold? What is the threshold? Like paid up share capital of 50 CR, turnover of 200 CR, and outstanding loans of 100 CR. Here, we don't, outstanding loans are not more than 100 CR. Paid up share capital is not more than 50 CR. Turnover is basically it's not given, but we will assume it's not more than 200 CR. Otherwise, we will also consider the turnover. Now, as a result, we will say that the section 138 is not applicable to the company. You are right, section 138 will not applicable to the company for the financial year 23-24. Again, I have to check for the previous year. So if I want to check applicability in the financial year 23-24, I had to check the things which were there in the previous year. That is financial year 22-23. Okay. And accordingly, I need to take the decision. So here, section 138 will not be applicable. But again, very good question, Manish. Now, what in case of right issue? See, for the unlisted public company, I need to see the paid up share capital during preceding financial year. If before the close of during preceding financial year, if I have that paid up share capital, either because of the right issue, bonus issue, I need to, appoint internal auditor in the next year. But if I don't have, if I'm doing anything in the next year, then next to next year it will be the year where I need to comply with the requirements. So the preceding financial year is very important. That is always be there. So if I'm checking the compliance for 23-24, I need to check what was the scenario in 22-23. Simple.
सर वन क्वेश्चन सर, ये क्वेश्चन ऑडिट से नहीं है, बट लॉ के अकॉर्डिंग अगर हमने 3 इयर्स तक वापस लिमिट हमारी डाउन हो गई, तो हम इस रेगुलेशन से वापस से कम बैक आ सकते हैं? मतलब इंटरनल ऑडिटर को नहीं लगाए तो चलेगा? जैसे हर हर रूल्स में होता है कि आपने 3 इयर्स तक कंप्लाई नहीं किया, मतलब 3 इयर्स तक की आपकी डाउन हो गई है लिमिट, तो आप वापस से आपकी कम बैक आ सकते हो। वो प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल नहीं होता, बट यहाँ पर कुछ कम बैक का ऑप्शन है, या कि एक बार लग गया देन फॉर एवर इज एप्लीकेबल?
See, now in this case, what is the scenario is, if you read your section 138 basically, okay, it doesn't say that there is a lock-in period or something like that. It doesn't specify that. And in most of the scenarios, companies, once they appoint, they do not, remove the internal auditors. That is a general practice that is being followed across the industry. Because once you fall under that category, you continue to have that. Why anyone will remove the person from the company? Why someone will remove the whole function from the company? So there is not such a scenario or any condition given in any of the provision of the act that it says that there is a lock-in period. The only condition is I need to see the previous year to check the requirement for the current year. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, sir.
Any other doubts? I hope you are now clear with the provisions of section 138 and rule 30. How these things work. Yes? Any doubt? Any doubt? Okay. If no doubts,
सर
yes.
सर एक और पॉइंट था जो छूट गया हमसे पूछने के लिए। जो 7.3 आपने बताया था, उसी के नीचे 7.4 था। उसमें एक लाइन है, फाइनली इन इंडिया इवन द स्टैट्यूट हैज नाउ रिकॉग्नाइज्ड दैट इंटरनल ऑडिट इज नेसेसरी फॉर द एफिशिएंट रनिंग ऑफ द कंपनी। द रिव्यू ऑफ इंटरनल ऑडिट फंक्शन इज स्पेसिफाइड कंपनी हैज बिकम अ स्टैच्यूटरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी फॉर द स्टैच्यूटरी ऑडिटर। सर ये लाइन हमें समझ में आ गई, नो डाउट, इसमें मुझे आपसे ऐसा कुछ पूछना नहीं है। बट सर क्वेश्चन ये है कि अभी जो आज सिनेरियो अगर हम देखते हैं, तो इंटरनल ऑडिट का फंक्शन लिमिटेड होता जा रहा है, एंड रादर देन स्ट्रेटजी ऑडिटर वो ज्यादा स्कोप में है। व्हाई सो?
No, it's reverse. In today's time, if you see, the role of internal auditor is increasing. So companies are appointing internal auditor without being, checking the whether they fall under section 130, 138 or not. So
ओके सर।
it is a reverse trend basically. If you see startups or a lot of companies which are even sometimes when a company goes for the venture capital or funding, not on the public
सर
listing.
एक्चुअली ये पॉइंट पे हमने जब हमारी वो करी थी, एडवांस आईटीटी की कोचिंग करी थी, मतलब जब लिया था तब उसमें ये पॉइंट रेज हुआ था, और उन्होंने ये चीज बताई थी कि स्टैच ऑडिटर का जो स्कोप है वो ज्यादा इसलिए क्योंकि वो हर कोई कंपनी को कंपलसरी करवाना होता है, एंड इंटरनल ऑडिट का कंपलसरी नहीं होता, इसलिए उसका जो स्कोप है वो कम होता जा रहा हो गया।
No, so basically, see how it works. Now, when I talk about the scope of internal auditor, if you see in your module itself, okay, if you see the scope of internal auditor, it's not only related to the financial matters. Did we only cover the financial matter? Answer is no. If I just show you quickly, It is not only financial matters or internal controls, that is, but you have organizational structure, you have goals and objectives, you have plan procedures and regulations, safeguarding of asset, utilization of resources, plus you talk about, you see governance related matters. Sometimes other areas like IT audit and all those things are part of that. For example, over here, risk management, governance. So that is also now part of, gradually they are also increasing, or they are making in coming into the internal audit. But is there any act or provision which defines what is the scope of internal audit? Answer is no. That is totally dependent upon the company or the audit committees. They have to decide what is the scope. So that's why in certain companies there might be a scenario that they have very limited role, but gradually it is being adopted, like internal audit is a very vast scope.
Okay, sir.
Any other doubts? So there is one doubt: if the company is in process in listed in listing for the current year, so the same things like 138 applicable for the current year or next year? Okay, very good question. Now, if the company is in process of getting listed, in that case, the company is required to comply with the provisions from the next year or from the current year. So, in case of a listed entity, I'm not going to wait for the previous year. Listed entities have to appoint the internal auditor like once they get listed, because there is no requirement of looking onto the previous year for listed entities. To check the threshold criteria, there is a requirement of preceding financial year. But when I say about listed, there is no requirement to go back and to check the previous year. So once they are listed, they have to appoint internal auditor. Any further doubt? No? Okay. So I think we had a very good discussion on chapter number 16. It was a very good recap also. Let's move to the chapter number 17 now. Okay. We will now start with the chapter number 17, basically. And we will discuss on the points like due diligence, investigations, and forensic accounting. Now, before I proceed to the chapter number 17, or I go into the detail of all the three things, understand at some point in time when you will see due diligence and investigation, you may find some similarity. You may find some similarity. When you go to investigation and forensic accounting, you may find some similarity, but each and every activity has its specific own use case. Okay. So you may think, okay, no, these are the overlapping activities. For example, when we were looking at the compliance audit or the performance audit, some areas were similar, kind of, with respect to laws and regulations. Or let's say when we were looking into comprehensive audit, yes, it included some portion of the compliance, some of the performance. So there was slightly or bit of overlapping. That is perfectly fine. Similarly, over here, when we will look into these topics, due diligence, investigation, forensic accounting, you may find some overlapping, but there are scenarios, there are use cases for them. They are based on the use case rather than they are based on the definition base. That means each and every activity, like a due diligence, it is carried out when there is a specific use of due diligence. Investigation, when it is required to be required investigation, and forensic accounting is when it is required. Okay. So let's start the discussion. Now, you tell me, what do you understand by the due diligence term? When it comes to the due diligence, what do you think? What it means? Anyone?
Sir, verification of material fact.
Verification of material fact, yes. Okay. What else? Very good, Manish. Study of future opportunity. Professional skepticism. Okay. What else do you think due diligence will involve? Anyone? Ownership of asset. Okay. See, when I say about due diligence, okay, let's understand the term due diligence now. In case of merger investment opportunities, in case of merger and investment, yes, correct. As I said, everything has a use case over here that we are discussing. So they are carried out in a particular scenario when we have a particular requirement. Then only we go for this particular area. Now, due diligence. Due diligence review. When I talk about, okay, it is basically a detailed review. Okay, there is a detailed review that is being carried out in due diligence. How many of you know about OECD? Anyone? How many of you know about OECD? No? You might have heard in text about the OECD. No? Okay. Basically, when it, okay, I'll give you the introduction. So, OECD is the Organization of Economic and Cooperation and Development. Okay. It's a very big organization, international organization. So OECD has it's more prominent when it comes to the taxation part. They on the ESG part, they are very active on that. Okay, so they have model conventions like tax treaties and everything. But when it comes to the due diligence, OECD also issued a guidelines respect to due diligence that were known as the OECD due diligence guidance for the responsible business conduct. Now, as the name suggests, like this is a guidance for the responsible business conduct, like how to carry out due diligence if we want to check about the business. From there, we can identify what is the use case of the due diligence. So due diligence is basically not to identify, is not kind of, when there is a fraud, I'll do a due diligence. No. As I said, each and everything has a use case over here. Due diligence is carried out when I want to understand and when I want to review a business, basically. Okay. At that point in time, I actually carry out the due diligence. I evaluate the business. Now, when I want to evaluate the business, there could be multiple scenarios. One is a merger acquisition. Yes. So at the time of mergers or acquisition, I may want to evaluate the business. At that point in time, I may carry out a due diligence. Or let's say if there's any investment opportunity, I may carry out a due diligence. So due diligence basically is carried out when you want to understand or when you want to evaluate the business. Now, you will say, sir, in audit also we evaluate the business, in audit also we identify things. So what is the difference between due diligence and audit? Again, case based. When it is a merger, do you carry out an audit? When you are required to do, let's say, a merger or acquisition, do you carry out an audit? Answer is no. Unless and until required by law, you do not, carry out the audit. But you do carry out in due diligence. Okay. And that it makes different from the audit. That in case of a due diligence, we actually go beyond the audit. Okay. We do not focus on the reasonable assurance. Rather, we focus on a specific area. There is a target. There is a objective. Why I am doing this, and that objective defines the particular activity. It may be financial due diligence, it may not be financial due diligence. It may involve checking on the basis of sample. It may involve full audit or not full audit, but full review. Okay. So due diligence is carried out when you think there is an opportunity, when you want to evaluate the business, when you actually want to know about the business, potential problems that can be there in the business, that can be there in the deals, that can be there in the merger acquisition with respect to that. Okay. So if I give you a use case for due diligence, okay, whenever mergers or acquisitions happens, whenever venture capital firms want to invest in a company, whenever a shareholder agreement is drafted, they have these conditions in those agreements or in those, behind those mergers, that okay, first a due diligence will be carried out, then only funds will be given to you. For example, I'll give you a hypothetical example, best practical example. Whenever a startup company goes to raise the fund from the investors, the first condition, investor will say, okay, your idea is good, I'm going to give you money. Let's say I'm going to give you 200 CR, 300 CR, whatever amount it is. But what they will do is, okay, let's do an agreement that is known as a shareholder agreement or, investors agreement. In that, I will agree you to pay 200 CR for this much stake, for this much particular, percentage of holding with these rights and what is it, whatever it is, conditions are there. But that will be subject to the due diligence which will be carried out and rectification of any of the observations that are identified in the due diligence. Means the startups are then required to carry out they are required to undergo a due diligence. A report is issued that is submitted to investors. If there are observations, then within the given timeline, whatever is being decided between the investor and the startup, they have to rectify those observations, and then only the transaction proceed ahead. So this is how actually on ground due diligence works. Any doubt? Any doubt till now with respect to due diligence? So if I want to do IPO, if I want to enter into investments, I want to do merger acquisitions, real estate transactions, joint venture, partnership, these due diligence are carried out. In various sectors, if there is a sector-based area, the due diligence are carried out for the sectors. Let's say for operational related, IPR related, a lot of things are there in due diligence then. I'll come to on that, Sanjana, that who carries out the due diligence. See, to understand the due diligence, we need to understand what is the who are involved in due diligence basically. Okay, like who does what and who is the responsible for what thing in due diligence. The way we understood in the audit also, who does the audit, what is the role of company, what is the role of shareholders and everything. Similar way, we will also see what is the role and who are the parties to the due diligence. Basically, in due diligence, there are, you can say, 3 parties involved in general. Okay. In general, in case of a due diligence, there are 3 parties involved. First one is the target company. Target company is the company whose due diligence will be carried out. So if let's say for example, if I am a startup, I become a target company. Okay. So target company is a company whose due diligence will be carried out. Now, second one is the reviewer. Reviewer is a person who will carry out the due diligence of the target company. So if I talk about who will carry out the due diligence, then reviewer will carry out the due diligence for the target company. Okay. Now, the third person can be there, cannot be there, but generally it is the you can say target audience or stakeholders, or in most of the cases they are the investors. Okay, so you can say stakeholder slash investors. Now sometimes, okay, or people, you can say buyer also. In case of merger acquisition, it can be a buyer. Now in most of the cases, in practical times, what happens is reviewer is being appointed by stakeholder or suggested by stakeholders or investors or buyers. Target company appoint that reviewer, and that reviewer then performs the due diligence, and after performance of the due diligence they finalize the report, which is one shares with the target company plus with the stakeholder. So reviewer then submits a report to the stakeholder also, and target company also provides their input on the report to the stakeholders. Okay, but sometimes you may not find a target company, or you may not find, sorry, a stakeholder, investor, buyer. A company suo moto may appoint a reviewer for the due diligence before it is going to the for any of the business or transactional opportunity. For example, let's say company knows that it's a startup, and whenever it will go to a particular investor will ask for the due diligence report. So in advance itself they appoint a reputed due diligence a person or a reviewer who carries out the review, and then they go with that report to the investors. That also happens in case of IP, in case of commercial, in case of real estate, regulatory. This kind of things happen. They go well in advance when it comes to the what do you say, due diligence. They carry out in advance, and then they go to the particular, what you say, uh, investor. So may not be a stakeholder, investor, or buyer will be there. Clear with this till now? Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? Okay. Now the question comes is, with respect to the due diligence, are there any standard available for carrying out the due diligence? So what do you think, guys? Are there any standard available to carry out the due diligence? Yes or no? Anyone knows any standards? Do you think there are standards which are required to be followed for due diligence? Anyone? No? No? Okay. Okay. You are absolutely correct. If I talk about with respect to the standards, there are no as such specific standard to carry out due diligence. Reason, because there is no standard due diligence involved. There is no standard due diligence. If I talk about a due diligence, like a standard due diligence, it does not exist at all. There is no standard due diligence. Are you getting my point? The way we have audit, we have predefined audits, internal audit, we have statutory audit, what is required to be done, what is not required to be done, scope, rules, responsibilities, regulations, everything is there. When I talk about due diligence, it's not like that. In due diligence, you don't have these things specified, you don't have these things, what is it? Available, like, you don't have a structure per se in due diligence. The reason, because in case of a due diligence, what happens is it is specific scenario based. It is specific scenario based. In that case, each and every due diligence is required to be carried out in a different way. Each and every due diligence will be carried out in a very different way. Now, I will show you one due diligence report, in some time, that we will discuss about, okay, how the report is prepared, due diligence report is prepared. But the question is that only format of due diligence report? Answer is no. There could be 10 different formats of due diligence, and there could be 10 different type of reports available. And the reason is because each and every type of due diligence is different. Okay, so for that we need to understand what are the types of due diligence that are carried out. If I talk about the types of due diligence, because each and every type of due diligence will have a different kind of report. When I talk about the types of due diligence, you may have a M&A related due diligence. Okay, so here the teams have to process a massive amount of data, basically under the strict deadline, to complete the analysis, to make sure that whether the buyer, okay, can buy the company, can do a acquisition, is there any legal issue with the acquisitions. Okay, and in case of acquisition of a foreign company or something, transaction which involves multiple jurisdiction, this becomes very complex thing, very, very complex. For example, let's say Indian company wants to acquire a company in some other nation. Okay, there is a merger going on, like Indian company will acquire another company which in another country. So over there, what is the way to acquire, the transaction, the legal compliance, everything, a lot of things can be there. So M&A is one big area for the due diligence. Second is a tax related due diligence. That is, in this case, tax related scenarios, tax compliances, tax laws, regulations are verified. Third, finance or financial due diligence, which is, we will go into financial due diligence also in detail, but finance is a very big area. Then comes the operation. Then comes the IP, intellectual property, or IPR. Then comes the commercial. Now, what is commercial due diligence? Can anyone tell me what is commercial due diligence? Anyone? Have you heard about commercial due diligence? Yes, no?
The operational due diligence, right? This is operational due diligence, right?
Operations due diligence we have over here. Operational or operations due diligence. But what is commercial due diligence? Proposed merger, okay. Yes, let's say in most of the cases we do a due diligence in case of merger. But what is commercial due diligence when it comes to merger, acquisition, or investment? What is the commercial portion in that? Any idea? I just don't want to be a one-way communication. So, that's why I'm asking you guys also. Whatever you know, whatever you think, it's the answer. You can give it. No issues. There is no right and wrong. What is commercial due diligence? Yes.
Whether its products are profitable or not.
Absolutely correct. Very good. When I talk about commercial due diligence, it focuses on the market share, profitability of the product, whether product is trending or not. For example, when I wanted to acquire a particular company, let's say automobile company, okay, now that company, while before I made an offer or the company discussed with me that they have the market share of 15% market share, and this is their product is top running product, and that's why I want to acquire. Before I acquire, I will verify these things, whether the market share is 15%, whether the product is actually demand, that product has a demand in the market, whether whether the product is fit for the market. So all those things I will verify. I will also verify, do you know about product life cycle?
Guess so.
What is product life cycle? Like, anyone if can explain a bit in short.
सर कंटिन्यू अप होता है, बस एक सैचुरेशन लेवल होता है, वहां से फॉल होना स्टार्ट हो जाता है.
Absolutely correct. Yes. Absolutely correct. So you have scenario where the product is increasing, like introduction, growth, maturity, and then decline. These are the phases in product life cycle. In commercial due diligence, I go and I identify in which category the product is into, in which particular category, whether it's in growth, whether it's in introduction stage, maturity stage, or decline stage. Okay, so that is your commercial due diligence. Then comes the human resource. Yes, we also do have a human resource related due diligence, and that is very important. Do you know what is done in human resource due diligence? Anyone?
Sir, hiring policies of the company.
Yes. But apart from that, there is one more aspect to the human resource due diligence, very big.
Employees, managers, qualifications.
Qualifications, yes, very good. So what happens is, let's say for example, target company, buyer. Okay. Buyer has 6 days a week. Target company, 5 days a week. Target company sick policies, leave policy, 21-day leave. Here you have 12-day leave. So these kind of scenarios are evaluated to understand whether the target company's employees who now enjoy 5 days a week or who enjoy 21 days leaves in a year will be able to shift to this particular area, like 6 days a week or 12-day leave. Or let's say, for example, bonus structure. Sales employees or sales department in target company get variable based on some percentage. Now in buyer company, that is totally gone away. That variable is not there for the sales team. Or rather, it's reverse. In the target company, sales team was having fixed value, fixed payout. Here, there is no fixed payout to sales team. So companies' bonus structure, schedules, leave, a lot of things are there when they do a human resource related. Even also compliance with the labor laws. Whether the old company was complying with the labor laws or not, or whether the new company, once they will acquire, whether they will be able to comply with the labor laws because of the change scenario. Then you have an environmental, or you can say ESG related. Nowadays, it is ESG related due diligence. You have a regulatory due diligence. You have again one more specific category of due diligence which might not be there, but in some cases it is used. That is a real estate. When a lot of real estate is involved in the transaction, okay, a lot of properties and physical properties are involved. At that point in time, real estate due diligence is also now picking it up, and buyers, they require real estate due diligence also to identify the real owner of the property, who owns the title, whether the title is clear or not, are there any litigations on the property, a lot of things are there. So these are certain kind of due diligences. Now understand one thing. When I say these due diligence are there, okay, various type of due diligence are there. In that case, do you think it is possible to have a standard report? Answer is no.
No, sir.
It is not possible to have a standard report in case of due diligence, because I have multiple. I will tell you about one more specific due diligence, that is known as CDD. Now, CDD is customer due diligence. That is not when I do investment or mergers acquisitions, but when I do a very big transaction with a customer in some other region. For example, I am a company, I am manufacturer, or I am involved into very big projects like making bridges, power plants, and everything. Now a customer from other country approached me that, okay, no, we want to build a power plant in our country. We have been awarded the contract by the government. You build this for us. So before I take that contract, before I accept that person or that company as a customer, I do customer due diligence. And usually that is done as per the guidelines which are given by FATF. You know what is FATF? This is again, might not be something you might not have heard about, but this is Financial Action Task Force. FATF. It's an intergovernmental body, global body, basically, which is more into combating money laundering, terrorist financing, and all that stuff. FATF, Financial Action Task Force. So FATF has given a guidelines, comprehensive guidance, how to carry out the customer due diligence. Again, that is very much relevant for the financial institutions. If they are dealing into some transactions with the countries or nations or customers who are, maybe are working in a very risky, or you can say some jurisdictions. So different kind of due diligence are there, different kind of, and as a result, not possible to have one particular standard report. Also, when I say these type of due diligences, there is one more thing. Whether the due diligence is a buyer side due diligence or a seller side due diligence, as I was saying, who is ordering the due diligence? Whether the buyer is carrying out the due diligence or seller is carrying out the due diligence. So, with case of the due diligence, after having multiple types, you have buyer side versus seller side. So, again, in that case, this is also makes a very big difference, like how the due diligence is carried out. Clear with this? Any doubt? Any doubt with respect to till now, whatever we have discussed? Any doubt? Okay. Basically, that is about due diligence. Now, the next thing we need to understand is how the due diligence is carried out. But before I proceed, I go and discuss on the due diligence, like how it is carried out. We will also see a report. We will discuss that report, how that report is structured, and from that we will try to identify how the due diligence is carried out. Okay, so we will go and see a report, and then we will discuss about it, how in actual the due diligence is carried out. Okay, so we'll see a report on, let's say, financial due diligence. Yes, we will see a financial due diligence report, and then on the basis of that we will discuss that how it is carried out. Before that, what I suggest is, let's take a quick 10-minute break. Okay, and then after the break we'll gather back and we'll see that report and we'll discuss further. Okay, let's take a quick 10-minute break. Ashok ji. Thank you, sir. Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's continue the session. So we were talking about one report, due diligence report. So let's go through that due diligence report. Okay, and let's understand with that report how an actual due diligence is carried out. See, this is one of the due diligence report. Okay, now this is environmental and social due diligence report. This is publicly available data, so not an issue. We can refer this. Okay, so this is publicly available environmental and social due diligence report. I'll also show you financial due diligence report, not an issue. But here the scenario is that this particular due diligence report, which is there, okay, how it is structured, what are the things in this, how due diligence is carried out, we will understand those points by looking at this report. Okay, let's and then we will draw reference to the financial due diligence from there, that how in actual the financial due diligence is carried out. See, this is the due diligence report. You see the content first. We will start with the content, table of contents. So you have the background first. They have specified the background. Okay, then they have specified the policies and directives and all those status in that. This is again part of the background, this one, because they will specify about the particular entity, project, or whatever transaction it is. So they are explaining the background. They are now explaining the rationale behind the due diligence. Environmental and social due diligence report, ESDDR, due diligence review. The objectives of the due diligence. So now they are going on to the objectives. Then they are talking about the approach, methodology for the due diligence, okay, in which they are talking about scope, approach, methodology, and projectual literature review and all that stuff. Then they have specified the environmental due diligence, what they have done. Then they have specified the social due diligence, what they have done. Okay, then what they are saying here is this: environmental and social corrective action plans, and then the annexures. Okay, basically if you see how it is structured is that first they provided the background introduction, then they talked about the particular entity, project, whatever it is, and they did the due diligence, and then the outcome of the due diligence they have reported with the corrective plans. So can I say that when I am performing a due diligence, what I'm doing here is I am basically, first of all, I am defining what I have to do. Okay, I am defining what I have to do with respect to discovering the entity, designing the processes, all that stuff. So in case of a due diligence, you basically, first of all, define that what you need to do in a due diligence. You set up a background, you understand the background of the due diligence, you basically identify what is my subject matter, why I'm doing the due diligence, what is the reason for doing the due diligence. Okay, and then I decide what is the rational, objective, approach, scope, methodology. So I design that, okay, that particular portion. Then I actually perform the due diligence. Now, if you see point number 3 over here, this is the actual performance of the due diligence. This one, and point number 4, this is the actual performance of the due diligence. And then you go with the reporting part. Okay, then you report on the due diligence. And when I talk about report of a due diligence, basically this is how the structure is. You have an executive summary, you have an introduction, background of the target company, your objectives, then scope, history, then again there will be a lot of things when it comes to the due diligence. For example, let's say if you have here they are referring to the rationale behind the environmental and social due diligence, but if let's say it's a financial due diligence, then you will have some different things, and then the due diligence, what is actually being performed. Okay, so this is how you do a due diligence, and then at the end you specify the suggestions on the various aspects that are there. recommendations which are there, and then that's the structure of your whole due diligence report. This is how you actually carry out the due diligence, and this is how you actually create a report on the due diligence. Any doubt with this? For example, I'll show you some glimpse of some of the areas. Let's go to the introduction part. This is the introduction. Okay, so they have specified the need for this due diligence over here, like why this due diligence is required. Again, that is the part we do at the time of planning, when we have to define why we have to do due diligence, what is the reason behind the due diligence. That is the first step in the due diligence, and that you also report in your, you also mention that in your report also. Then you talk about the framework, like what you are going to look into, all that stuff. Okay, and just I'll also show you, wait a minute. Yeah, you specify the background about the entity, what is the basically due diligence carried about, why the due diligence is carried about, what is the subject matter over here. Okay, so they have specified the subject matter of the particular due diligence. Okay, then comes the policies or directives. What is the scope? Basically, this defines like policies or directives that you want to look into. Okay, then the rationale, again, we also saw the rationale in the introduction. Objectives of the due diligence, what you are expecting, what is the objective of the due diligence. Basically assess, for example over here, assessment and verification of the project and its key component. Okay, undertaking environmental and social due diligence in line with the requirements. So that is my objective. Reviewing the adequacy of the proposed designs, conducting an assessment of the processes. Okay, based on the assessment, providing a detailed evaluation and developing a detailed and time-bound action plan and corrective action plan. And if you see the approach, basically scope will be environmental and social due diligence that we have already seen as a part of the report. Okay, approach, if you see project literature reviews, stakeholder consultations, analysis of the data, identification of the risk and impact, preparation of the report, consultation of draft output, finalization of report, and disclosure of final report. Again, they will specify the each step, like what they do, project outline and everything, all that stuff is there. Okay, and then they will carry out the report, due diligence report. And see, this is the outcome of the report basically over here. Like what was the applicability of that particular act or rule, reason of applicability, concerned authority, implementation, whether done or not, whatever it is. So whether it's applicable or not. So all that stuff is recorded over here. And then they talk about what actually they have seen in the due diligence. So a lot of things are there in that, a detailed report. Now, if you compare this particular report with an audit report, basically, what difference do you see? If I ask you, what is the difference between this and audit report? What are the difference you can see between the due diligence report and the audit report? Anyone? There are a lot many differences. Anyone with this answer? No? Opinion, assurance. Very good, Sanjana. Here we are not talking about reasonable assurance. No. If you see, here they are talking about what is done, what is not done. This is more onto the fact-based review rather than the reasonable assurance. The objective here is different. The objective is not to enhance the degree of confidence. The objective is to provide an outcome, definite outcome, like whether it is being complied or not. whether the environmental, social, in this particular report, when it comes to financial, it may have a different, objective. So the objective, it's altogether different when it comes to the due diligence. Yes, very good, Ginny. Due diligence is very much in detail. Okay. So what you see, what you have seen, the data, outcome, everything is very much in detail. It's not like that. The thing, we like the audit report. In audit report, you do not prepare this much detailed report. Yes, you do have the key audit matters. Yes, you do have the other paragraphs, but you don't go on to the detailed step by step how the due diligence was carried out. Like, in audit, we don't do that. Step by step that how the audit was carried out. We provide an overview and the outcome of the audit. But here, rather than the outcome, what is done is more focused upon. And then the outcome or the corrective actions are just, one part of it. For example, if I show you, and these are the annexures just a minute. So basically, if I show you most of the scenario in this particular report, findings and areas of concern for social safeguard. So they gave you at the end what are the findings and the areas of concern. Basically, corrective action plans or the observations. So they have given the detailed observations over here. Like what are the observations? These are the observations, and with that they are giving, okay, what corrective actions are required to be taken for each observation and what is the timeline. In audit, you do provide observation, your misstatements, you report on that, qualified and various type of reports, modified, unmodified opinion. But here they go a step ahead. They provide what are the corrective actions that are required to be taken, what is the timeline, and just like we discussed in internal audit, that once the report is issued, continuous follow-up and monitoring is done. Same here is also. Once the corrective actions are there, whether they are being complied, not complied, what is the scenario, that is also checked. So this is how your due diligence report is actually. Clear with this? Any doubt, guys? Any doubt with respect to due diligence report? How the report is structured, how the due diligence is carried out? Anyone? Similar way, I'll show you some more due diligence report. Basically, okay. There are certain, I'll show you one example of the, technical due diligence also. I will show you public due diligence also. A lot of things are there. Again, that those are publicly available data. Nothing is something, which is not there. Now, this is an example of your public due diligence report. Oh, sorry, technical due diligence. Again, one of the type of due diligence. It may have a different altogether reporting type. Okay, see, you may find some different reporting structure. Just let me show you. Over here. For example, you have introduction, then about, project, all those stuff, project configuration, because it's a technical due diligence report. Okay, then you might have different altogether format of due diligence over here. But the approach is same. You define what is your due diligence, why you want to do it. Then you discover about the project. Then you perform the analysis, you collect the data, you perform the due diligence, and then you, on the basis of that, you report about that. Similar way, there is one, due diligence report. This is again an international due diligence report. It may have a different format altogether. Okay. So this is cost related due diligence report. This is public due diligence report. Again, these are publicly available data, but these are different type of due diligence reports, and that I'm showing you so that you can get a good understanding of that. And again, each and every report will work on a different format. based on the requirements. So there is one question: what if the auditor prepares due diligence report incorrectly or any false info is given in the report? That goes back to your requirement of the due diligence, from where it is coming. See, when I talk about due diligence, it is done for the target company and it is done for the investors, buyers, and stakeholders. If you prepare incorrect due diligence report, obviously you give false information in that, you are doing a fraud. Like, it's kind of a fraud, because you are making someone to invest in a company on a fraudulent information. So it's kind of a fraud that you are doing, and you may be held guilty for all those stuff. So if you give any false information knowingly, it's kind of a fraud that you are doing in the due diligence report. I hope it is clear. Okay. Now, if I ask you, I now want you guys to answer. I have shown you the due diligence report. Okay. Now, if I ask you, okay, tell me, how will you carry out a financial due diligence? Or how will you carry out a full-fledged due diligence? What areas you will check? If let's say I am the buyer, I reach out to you. Okay, reviewer, please carry out a due diligence of the target company. Okay, before I want to buy, carry out the review of target company. What areas you will check in that due diligence? I want you to do give me the areas for the complete financial due diligence. How will you carry out the financial due diligence then?
So debt equity ratio.
Okay.
So liquidity also consider.
Yes, liquidity. See, whenever, if I talk about due diligence, if I talk about review, if I talk about audit, understand there are basic step will not go. For example, first is planning, understanding, performing, then evaluation and the report. So when I talk about, if I ask you, okay, you have to do a financial due diligence, think from a point of view of, okay, what things you will look into at the time of planning, what information you will look into at the time of performing. Okay, reviewing, analysis and the reporting part is separately, but as of now, planning and performing, what areas you will look into? Yes, very good, Sanjana. Financial ratios, financial statements, yes. What else? Let's say I ask you, okay, this is the company. Let's say, for example, XYZ startup, which is a private limited company. Okay, I ask you, go and perform the financial due diligence so that I can decide whether I want to buy the company or not. I want to buy XYZ private limited. So it is merger and acquisition. I have appointed you as a reviewer. What you will do?
Well, assess the assets and liabilities and
Yes.
सर लिक्विडिटी तो हमने बोल ही दिया था कि लिक्विडिटी कंसर्न करेंगे और एनी कंटीजेंट लायबिलिटी जो हिडन हो चाहे हिडन लायबिलिटीज
Absolutely correct. Company's market share growth. Yes, very good, Jenny. What else? I'll tell you how I will carry out. First of all, When I will start with the due diligence, I will go with the basic. Whatever, the basics we have learned, it's simple. Like I will understand the entity. Because till the time you have not understood the entity, what analysis or due diligence, review, audit you will do? Understanding the entity is must in any of the case. And when I talk about understanding the entity, I will understand few things about the entity so that I can get a good clarity what I need to check. For example, incorporation. When it was incorporated, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Number two, promoters. Because it's a private limited company, promoter driven, who are the promoters? Or if it is not a private limited company, who are the owners? Who are the directors? Basically, the management or those charged with governance. Who are these people? Do they have any fraud case on them? I am doing a review, due diligence. It's not an audit, it's due diligence. So let's say it's a seller side due diligence. So first thing I will check whether they have any cases or any, fraudulent cases or anything pending litigations on the promoters. If I'm satisfied with the promoter, then only I'll go to the next step on the company. If I have a doubt on the promoter's integrity, then it is a problem. Remember, SA 210 also we discussed about integrity of the management. Yes or no? SA 210, 220, we discussed about the integrity of the management. How many of you remember that? You guys are not focusing. Okay. So similarly, I will go and check about the company, when it was incorporated, what is the background of the company. Now, again, the business sector in which it is involved, industry. Why? Because I want to understand what they do sell, in which sector they are operating, in which industry they are working. That is a basic understanding that I will obtain. And on the basis of that business sector industry, I will define laws and regulations that are applicable. Till the time I don't know whether it's a banking entity, whether it's an insurance, what are the ratios they are required to maintain, how financial statement they are required to maintain, I will not be able to do a financial due diligence. I need to have the understanding of the laws and regulations that are applicable to entity. Once I do that, the next step I will check into is their financial records, because it's a financial due diligence. Okay. Now, what financial records will contain? You can say accounting policies. They are basically all the records which are there. For example, invoices, expenses, expense invoice, sales invoice, receipt, all that stuff. Documentation. Third, contracts and agreements. Very important, because this will give me an understanding of what are the obligations upon the company, in which, let's say, customer contracts. If the company is operating into a scenario where they build, where they are into a very big project based company, okay, real estate company. So what they have, what contracts they have with the customer, how much it is spending, are they liable to pay any penalty on those contracts, can they foreclose the contract? Sometimes with the customers you have a contract that you cannot sell the company, ownership cannot get transferred. Same way, for example, what do you say, contracts with the banks, loan agreements, shareholder agreements. Means I have already taken some funds from outside, from some other investor, and there was a condition in that agreement that I cannot dilute the equity percentage of that investor. If I am issuing new shares, I have to make sure that the percentage of that particular investor remains the same. Or I cannot sell the company without its NOC. Or I am into a lock-in period of 3 years or 5 years. I cannot sell my company. Remember that there was a very good litigation that was going on, where a company wanted to sell its particular business to a particular company, but it was not able to do that just because they earlier did an agreement with another company for taking up some funding. So 2 to 3% funding was there via some subsidiaries, and because of that, they were not able to sell their business to another company. That was a practical example. Why we need to check the loan agreements or shareholder agreements in case of financial due diligence. So financial reports, very important point. Third, after financial records, I will review the financial statements. Now, very important point that I will talk about here. That is, when I'm going to check financial statement, what is the period I'm going to select? Can anyone tell me the period for the review of financial statement?
Period for which financial due diligence is to be done.
So what is the usually period for which the financial due diligence is done? Like anyone?
Previous year?
12 months, we are saying?
Yes, sir.
Anyone else with a different answer?
So it would be different period, like 3 years or 5 years, depend on the requirement of buyer of that entity, with to know about the capability of that firm or that organization कि कितना profit वो कमा रहा है, आप कितना उसका strength है financially.
Absolutely correct. So it's not 12 months. It could be from the start of the business, from the date of incorporation, as may be required. Yes, Chandan, very good. So I may cover 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, based on the data, time, availability is there. See, in due diligence, the important factor is that the deliverability, when you have to, issue the report. Usually 45 to 60 days time period is given to perform the due diligence and to issue the report. Now, in that, we already, in most of the cases, what we agree with the, when it is seller side due diligence, we agree that we will go to the last 3 years or 5 years of financials, not beyond that. Yes, for the contracts agreements, we may go to the major contracts agreement. We may go back to the, let's say, to the incorporation if they are in existence or active as of today. For example, company did a loan agreement with the bank 10 years down the line, which they have repaid fully. Why I will go there? Why I will, refer to that agreement back? It is 10-year-old. But if an agreement which is 10-year-old, which was done with a particular bank for a particular project, it was for the 25 years and it is still active, I will go to that agreement. I will review that particular loan agreement with the bank. So that depends upon areas or the agreements or the, transactions, which as of today also they have the impact. So if I talk about a particular period, it can be any. For different transactions, I can have a different period. For example, I may say to the seller that, okay, I'll review the revenue for the last 3 years, expenses for last 2 years, and major transactions for since incorporation, like this way. I can have a different time period for different type of areas. And that is there. So when I talk about financial statements, general purpose financial statements, special purpose financial statements, everything. When I talk about financial statement, any certifications that has been issued by any auditor, any chartered accountant, or any other person, I will review that also. Third, I will review MIS reportings. I will review group reportings. Whatever period I have agreed, I will review group reports in that particular scenario. When I talk about financial statements, it is not only the financial statement basically I will review of the target company, but subsidiary financial statement also. Because at times I am acquiring the parent company just to have the subsidiaries under me. Okay. So in most of the scenario, what happens is that they don't acquire each and every subsidiary. They just acquire holding company so that all the subsidiaries become part of that particular group. So in that case, subsidiaries financial statement also I will verify. So financial statement not only of the company but of subsidiary also will also be considered. Then next part that I will review in a financial due diligence is your cash flow. See, financial statement is one thing. Cash flow is another thing. So what cash flow, net cash inflow is there is something I will look into. What is the cash profit for the company? What cash profit does the company make? Financial profit, perfectly fine. What is the cash profit? What is the cash turnover ratio? Cash related items. Okay. What is the cash turnover for the company? In that case, I will verify all that stuff, because at the end we need to see that whether to pay the expenses, whether the company is able to generate that cash. Revenue, profits separate, cash is separate. Then it comes to the other areas like taxation. You may go for financial projection. You may go for compliance. Okay, management employees and all that stuff. But these are certain areas that you look into when you perform a financial due diligence. And this is how actually you carry out. You understand the entity, you pick up the records, financial statement, cash flow, taxation, and you also go to the projections, if budgets, anything if prepared by the company. Clear with how you carry out the financial due diligence? Any doubt?
Yes, sir. सर ये किसी भी तरीके के ड्यू डिलिजेंस पूछ सकते हैं कि जैसे अभी आपने बनाया लाइक फाइनेंशियल ड्यू डिलिजेंस, तो हमारे माइंड में क्लिक कैसे करेंगे हम कि ये पॉइंट कंसीडर कर सकते हैं? मतलब आई नो कि ये पॉइंट्स आपने जो बताया कि हमें भी अगर मतलब स्ट्रेस देते तो थोड़ा बहुत टाइम लगा के सोचते, बट लेकिन इतना नहीं सोच पाते जितना आपने बताया, तो कैसे पॉसिबल है?
See, what is expected from you when it comes to the questions and exam is whatever is there in your study material, anything out of that will not be there.
Sir, your voice is getting
Am I audible now? So what I'm saying is that whatever it is there in the study material, that is fine. So anything beyond study material will not be asked. So let's say, for example, different type of due diligence, like technical due diligence, environmental, social due diligence, legal due diligence, IT due diligence. It may not be relevant for you because, again, IT due diligence. You might not be expert into the IT or environmental due diligence. You might not be expert into the environmental norms and regulations. So don't worry on that. Let's say financial due diligence. Whatever is given in your study material, you are expected to understand that much, or it may be, questions will be asked from that much. So if I say basic about the due diligence, what is due diligence? Yes, it can come. On the detail side, financial due diligence, what is given in your study material about that, it can come. Like how to perform financial due diligence or a particular area of a financial due diligence which is given. But it will not be the case that, okay, someone is asking you, okay, how will you perform technical due diligence? Don't worry on that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So that's why I always refer, I have always suggested, please read the study material. You will come to know what are things are given in that, and that is the, and study material. If you see, I'll go to the, chapter number 17. When it comes to the due diligence, what is given and what will be asked, and it will be from this only. You have the understanding of the due diligence, basic understanding. Okay, difference between due diligence and audit that we discussed, importance of due diligence, various types of due diligence, but it is just a type of due diligence which is mentioned over here. Okay, what are the various type of due diligence? When it comes to the financial due diligence, you have a detailed how the financial due diligence is carried out, the areas that we just now discussed. Each area, each thing that we discussed, how it is actually, verified. Everything is written with respect to the financial due diligence. So anything from this, yes, because you are expected to read and understand these areas. So financial due diligence part that we discussed, like for example, hidden liabilities. How in due diligence hidden liabilities are identified. How overvaluation of asset is identified in due diligence. It is same that what we discussed. Like, the concepts are same. Nothing new is there in this. Okay, but once you will read, you will get an understanding. Taxation, cash flow, financial projection, all this stuff, whatever we are discussed is same. Then how the due diligence is performed, work approach. This is also we discussed. For example, you define what you first need to do. Then you gather the information, you discover the things. Then you perform the due diligence. Then you prepare the report, and steps goes on like this way. Design, discover, diagnose, and deliver. These are the steps in the due diligence, basically. If I talk about define, is something you can say with respect to scoping and objectives. When you say design, it's kind of, designing the way we design the audit procedures. It's similar, designing the audit procedures. Or basically, you can say planning. Discover is kind of understanding the entity. Diagnose is kind of performing. And deliver is what you deliver the report. Now the defend part is kind of, basically what you say is that you, after report issuance, you in due diligence, you have to explain the report to the seller. Okay, let's say buyer is there, you need to explain what is the outcome of the report, what are the observations. It's not just like, the opinion that we issued in the audit, like qualified opinion, matter closed. No, you have to explain each and every point. So that is the defend, explanation part. This is how the due diligence is that we have discussed. How to conduct similar, like, what we discussed. Content of the due diligence report. Similar what we discussed. Introduction, background, objectives, history. Now, this is again with respect to the financial due diligence. So you have this particular areas of financial part. Remember over there we have environmental and social. Similar, you have financial areas of financial due diligence. Same again, financial due diligence areas, and then this you have a suggestions and corrective actions over here. Suggestions of the various aspects. This is also we discussed. This is how the due diligence is, and that is only will be expected from you. Any doubt with the due diligence part? Any doubt? And that is what the due diligence is that I wanted to discuss. Any doubt? No? Okay. Now, basically, this is due diligence that we discussed. The next part that I want to discuss, and the next area that I want to discuss is investigation. Can anyone tell me what do you mean by investigation? Like, what do you understand when you hear this term investigation?
Something find out.
Something find out, okay. Anything else? Investigation. What do you understand by investigation? Like, what do you think could be investigation?
सर किसी भी फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट में मे बी जैसे कि डेटर्स है तो हमें उसके अंदर डीप एग्जामिनेशन करना है उसका, तो हम इन्वेस्टिगेशन का यूज करेंगे यानी
Yes. Yes, correct.
एक तरीके से स्पेशल ऑडिट भी कह सकते हैं अपने इसको, यानी जो
Hmm.
एक्चुअली पर्टिकुलर वर्ड नहीं मिल रहा है जो मैं बोलना चाहती हूँ एक्चुअली.
So, basically, you are saying that if you want to check something,
यस सर.
okay. Anything else? In fraud cases, Sanjana, yes. To uncover something, yes. What else do you think about when you hear the word investigation?
सर एक्चुअली बहुत गहराई से जांच करना,
Yes, very
मैं
good.
ये कहना चाहती थी एक्चुअली.
Yes, good. Very good. Anyone else? With the term investigation, lifting of corporate will, yes, very good. So, like we understood, like, okay, what is due diligence? Now, we also know investigation to check something in much more detail. But the question comes is that when investigation is carried out, like you told me that okay, this is how this is what we do in the investigation. But what in actual when this investigation is carried out? Anyone?
सर सस्पेक्ट होता है फ्रॉड का तब होता है.
Yes. Apart from that,
जब कहीं रेड पड़ती है तब भी इन्वेस्टिगेशन ही होता है.
yes. Anything else that you think could be related to this is means at this time investigation is done?
और कोई डिस्प्यूट होता है तब भी, या कोई कन्फ्लिक्ट होता है किसी क्लेम को लेकर.
Okay, yes, very good.
सर अगर शेयर होल्डर्स को कंपनी में कुछ भी ऐसा लगता है कि ये प्रॉपर वर्क प्रॉपरली नहीं चल रहा है या फिर फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट करेक्टली नहीं शो हो रहे हैं, तब शेयर होल्डर्स में भी कंडक्ट एन इन्वेस्टिगेशन.
Okay, yes, absolutely correct. See, I'll tell you now. Investigation, as you correctly pointed out, investigation is something when you go and check something in deep. Okay. If I have to go and check something in very much detail, I want to check on the facts. First of all, investigation is basically looking into the facts, inquiring into the facts. That is, whether this has happened or not happened, this is there or not there. Okay. It has a very specific scope when it comes to the investigation. Unlike, audit or due diligence where we have a wider scope, investigation is not like that. Investigation scope is very much specific. That I want to investigate in this particular thing, I want to investigate in this particular thing.
Sir, one more thing, I think we should add in this. For audit, we have some limited time period, and investigation can go long also.
Yes, absolutely correct. So there is no time period in the investigation because your investigation gets completed when you close or you establish that particular objective. Means your investigation was with respect to whether this has happened or not. So once that investigation gets completed, then only once you establish whether this has happened or not, you complete your investigation. Okay. So investigation is not time bound. At times it takes a lot of time compared to your due diligence, compared to your audit. Investigation is not time bound. Now the question comes is, if the investigation is not time bound, then in that case, again, it has very specific scope. It has the person who is basically asking for investigation can differ. Okay. For example, if I just tell you for example, now there are investigations which are done under Companies Act. We will see that there are investigations which can be done under SEBI's regulation, and there are investigations which can be done by SFIU. There is an investigation which is done by the FIU. Do you know FIU India? That's a financial intelligence unit. Okay. So they also do investigations under PMLA. That is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So, various laws and regulations can require investigation. IBC, and sometimes, in case of a liquidation also, the official liquidator can basically, ask for the investigation. So there are various laws and regulations for the investigation. Now the question is investigation only done under the law or regulation? Then the answer is no. So basically we divide investigation into two categories. One is your regulatory investigation, or you can say kind of legal investigation. One is your, assignment or engagement based investigation. Basically where you look into the matters when it is required between the parties. So parties can also order investigation. Okay. So investigation can be with respect to legal matters. Investigation can be also with respect to your normal matters. But there could be various type of investigations, as I said. Okay. For example, internal investigations. Company, suo moto, can hire investigators to look into some matters. So internal investigation can be there also. There is no third party. The company itself is carrying out the investigation. So various type of investigations can be there. For example, investigation with respect to a particular item in your particular contract. Let's say management is not comfortable how this department has awarded this contract, or how the subsidiary has acted upon this particular contract. Investigation can also be on that particular area. You name it, an investigation can be there on that particular area. So there is no limitation on the part or the scope or the area of investigation. Usually it is kind of statutory and non-statutory investigation. Non-statutory can be multiple. Okay. investigation by partner in partnership firms, investigation for the valuation of private companies, investigation by banks, financial institutions, investigation by company itself for the fraud. Like, companies, do they have their in-house investigators to sometimes, investigate fraud related matters? Investigation with respect to some matters with respect to a contract. Okay, a lot of things can be there in the non-statutory one. But when I talk about statutory part, it can be Companies Act, it can be SEBI, it can be, other related acts and laws and regulations. It can be many. But what we will look into here is basically the statutory investigations which are carried out under the Companies Act. Okay. Now, when I talk about investigation, can anyone tell me, what do you think, how investigations are carried out? Types and, that we will discuss in detail, not an issue. But how the investigation is carried out, what do you think? Like, okay, when I talk about, okay, you do investigation, what you will do?
सिर्फ वो वाले स्टेप्स बताने हैं क्या? सिर्फ वो वाले स्टेप्स बताने हैं जिसमें इंस्पेक्टर अपॉइंट होता है और फिर वो बुक्स कौन रिकॉर्ड्स को अपने पास में रख लेता है?
You are being appointed as an investigator as of now for a particular matter. Let's say it's fraud you are investigating fraud. Now tell me, how will you investigate?
सर, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो अंडरस्टैंडिंग द मैटर जो हुआ है, एंड देन अकॉर्डिंगली रिकॉर्ड्स और जो भी बुक्स हैं वो हम अपने पास बुला लेंगे, रख लेंगे और उनको इन्वेस्टिगेट करेंगे। और जब तक नहीं देंगे, जब तक कि हम उनसे प्रॉपरली इंश्योर नहीं हो जाते कि जब उसमें कुछ गलत नहीं है, एंड रिकॉर्ड और मार्किंग के साथ देंगे कि इट्स ऑडिटेड और इट्स कंप्लीटली मतलब नॉट रिलेवेंट फॉर दैट पर्पस। एंड उसके बाद हम इंक्वायरी करेंगे मैनेजमेंट से एंड एम्प्लॉयज से कि whether they involve in that fraud or how that happened in that organization, or fourth thing, process or steps involved in that fraud. That the main thing.
Okay.
And और जो भी इसमें फिर इन्वॉल्व है तो उसको हम मैनेजमेंट को और दोस्त चार्ज गवर्नेंस को रिपोर्ट करेंगे, एंड अपनी रिपोर्ट में भी इशू करेंगे कि दैट्स द पॉइंट कि यहाँ पे ऐसे फ्रॉड हुआ।
ओके।
और अगर वो फ्रॉड बहुत सीरियस है, कहीं और किसी और रेगुलर रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस के हिसाब से किसी लॉ के अंदर आता है, तो उन डिपार्टमेंट्स को भी रिपोर्ट करेंगे।
Okay, very good. Yes. Anyone else? Like something they want to add more to this? Anyone? Okay. No, I'll tell you. Pretty much you said correctly. Your answer is correct, but it is bit more, more what you say. I'll define the structure, how it is done. In actual, on ground, okay. I will tell you on ground how it is done. Okay. Basically, when it comes to investigation, okay, what happens is, first of all, I determine what is the, you can say, objective of the investigation. Let's say fraud. Okay, fraud investigation as of now. Or take up any statutory investigation or whatever. Hypothetical example, as of now, we'll take the fraud. Okay. Let's say I'm doing a fraud investigation. Now, the first thing I will define is my objective. What is my objective? And it plays very, very important role. Defining the objective plays very important role. Why? I tell you. Let's say I asked you to do an investigation of fraud, and I ask you, check and let me know whether the fraud is done or not. Okay, so your objective is to establish whether the fraud is done or not. If I hire you for the fraud only, and if I ask you, go and do an investigation whether these people are involved in fraud or not, both are different. On the one side, your focus is on the whether the fraud is there or not. On the second assignment, your focus is the whether this person is involved in fraud or not. So the objective of your investigation will be very much important. Even a single change in the objective will change the path of the investigation altogether. Your approach, the evidence, the all those steps will change. If I ask you to focus on a person, you will focus on a person. You will perform your investigation like that way. If I ask you to focus on the fraud, the event, investigation will like be that way. So determination of the objective of the investigation is very critical. The first and very important step in the investigation. Objective. Why you are doing this investigation. Doing an investigation of fraud is not sufficient as an objective. Trust me, not. When you do on-ground investigation, fraud investigation is just a type. But your overall objective, why you are being hired, whether you want to establish a fact, whether you are here to rule out some facts. Sometimes investigation happen or investigators are appointed to rule out something. Rule out means this has not happened. You have to do investigation to establish whether this has not happened. For example, investigation was done, okay, or investigators were hired to show that there is no fraud in this particular contract. Means there was no tip of the fraud, there was no whistleblower, there was nothing. Just to be double sure, or someone wanted a more comfort, we hired an investigator. We said, investigator, go and check whether do you find any fraud or not. Your role is to identify whether in actual any fraud is present or not. Because we know that there is no fraud in this, you just check on that. You do investigation on that. That kind of is also there. So, basically, your objective is the prime and very important thing when it comes to the investigation. That defines the path of the investigation. Based on your objective, you determine your scope. Person, event, whether it has happened, not happened, whatever your objective is, your scope will be decided on that. Then, once I decide the scope, the next step is I, based on the scope, formulate a program of investigation. Now, most people might not be aware here that how the program is formed. See, when it comes to the investigation, it's not like, I do audit program like, okay, these are the high risk area. I do the risk assessment. I identify the high risk areas. Risk assessment is done. And on those areas, then audit procedures are designed and then performed. No. When it comes to the program forming, it is very much different in investigation. Okay. Once I have the scope in program, first step is always, understanding whatever investigation you are doing. You're understanding the subject matter. It is the first step, always. Just like anything, understanding the subject matter is the first thing you will do in the investigation in your program. Now, second thing you do in your program is that Your program basically is not just one linear program that these are the steps I'll do, that's it. No. Your program is a very flexible and dynamic program in investigation. In an investigation, you decide your program, you keep your flexibility in your program so that based on the evidence or information during the investigation that you collect, you can modify it, or you can, it should be that much flexible that you can change it. For example, your objective was to identify whether the fraud has happened or not. Now, during the audit, you identify some information which is not that much clear. So you have to amend your program. So defining the program is very much important, and that should be flexible enough to accommodate the changes, and that will happen by default. Trust me, there is no static program available in investigation. I have never seen a one that, okay, you do 10 steps and that is done. Every time it's a flexible, it changes, and it happens that changes are there. Once I do the programming, I actually perform, that is examination. Now in examination, I basically collect the evidence. Okay.
I didn't understand that.
So I collect the evidence. I basically, collect the details on which I want to carry out the investigation. First, in examination, my prime focus is on the collection. My prime and very important focus goes on to the collection of evidence, not the analysis. First, I focus on collect the data as much as you can. Whatever details you need, collect it. Sometimes there are two ways of collection of data. One is passive collection, one is active collection. What is passive collection is, let's say for example, I am investigating whether this person has actually, performed the fraud or not. So first I will do a passive collection, that I will collect the documentary evidence around it. Not related to the person, but whatever information is around it with respect to the transaction, with respect to, whatever I can get. And then I will collect evidence directly from that person by investigating the person, by his records, looking into the files in PC and all that stuff. But first I'll do the passive collection, and then I'll do the active collection. So, there are various methodologies, there are various ways to do the examination or collecting the evidence. Evidence collection is an art when it comes to the investigation, trust me. Okay. Then once you collect, that collected information requires analysis. Why? Because only collection is not enough. You have to connect the dots. Sometimes things are not that much clear. So you have to collect, you have to revisit that, you have to see the documents. Let's say I collected some contracts. Now I'm going to the contracts, but I identified something is amiss with respect to some invoices. So I'll again go back and check the invoices. I'll again cross connect with the contracts, invoices, payments came from here, this much payment, this is contract, other contracts, standard terms and conditions. A lot of, connecting the dot happens. And trust me, in case of investigation, collection analysis is a continuous process. Once you collect, you analyze, and once on the basis of analysis, you may collect it again. So it's a cycle. Analysis, collection, connection. And once you are satisfied, you come out of that cycle and you then do a reporting. You prepare your conclusions, you draw up your conclusions, and you report on that. This is how investigation is in actual done. Any doubt with this? Any doubt in this? Any of the part? Any doubt? It means investigation will become. See, Jenny, investigator has this role that to look into the details. So you can say that yes. Chandan, can you reframe your query? If we define objectives like to rule out instead of finding facts, can the result be manipulated? Can you just explain it bit your query? Any doubts? Any doubt with respect to investigation till now? What we have seen, how in actual it is done? It is not basically only for the fraud investigation. It is for all type of investigations. How it is done? Now I will ask a question from you. Do you think investigations required 100% verification?
No, sir.
Absolutely correct. It may not require. See, again, as I said, the purpose of investigation will decide what you are looking into. You may have to verify 10%, you may not. Based on your investigation about the matter, that will decide. Now, second question. Can you rely on the audited financial statement when you are doing investigation?
So it depends.
Depends on what?
Depends the area of investigation. मतलब like अगर बहुत सीरियस है और ऑडिटर को भी खुद को पता नहीं था और उसने भी वो मिस कर दिया तो हम रिलाय नहीं करेंगे। और अगर उसने कॉर्पोरेट किया है और उसने ये एरिया बोल मतलब मैनेजमेंट को हाईलाइट किया था तो फिर हम उसको कंसिडर करेंगे।
Okay. Usually, if your financial statements are subject matter for the investigation, means you are doing investigations because there is a question on the financial statement. That is a subject matter of the investigation. In that case, you will not. However, if that is not part of your subject matter, that is not under the question as of today, there is no point in not relying on that. So investigation doesn't mean that you don't rely on anything. It's not like that. You cannot rely on the subject matter which is there. But if that is not part of your subject matter, the thing which is under the question, if it is not part under the question, then there is no point in not relying on that.
सर बट समटाइम हम क्वालिफाई रिपोर्ट देते हैं तो वो भी तो रिलाई कर सकते हैं ना क्योंकि उसमें ऑडिटर ने एक तरीके से मतलब मैनेजमेंट के साथ में डिस्क्रिपेंसी थी उसकी तभी हमारी क्वालिफाई रिपोर्ट हुई है नहीं तो हम अनमॉडिफाइड देते हैं उस रिपोर्ट को राइट।
Exactly.
तो फिर हम
No, please continue.
फिर हम इन्वेस्टिगेशन पर्पस में जब जाएंगे तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन में हम उस रिपोर्ट को कंसिडर करेंगे और बाकी रिपोर्ट को कंसिडर नहीं करेंगे राइट। मतलब बाकी अगर कोई और अगर मैटर रिलेटेड टू इन्वेस्टिगेशन है तो
See, again, that is, again, I would say that, let's say, for example, there's a qualified report. Can I rely on that qualified report? Just because there is a qualification, I will not say that I can rely on that report. Now the question sometimes comes is, let's say auditor has qualified on a matter of a fact or on a matter of a fraud. Now investigation scope is like that only, that they have to verify that fraud. I may not rely on that qualification. So at the end I need to see whether it's a subject matter. If yes, I cannot. If it is not, then if there is nothing in front of me which is pointing out that okay, I should not be relying, I can rely.
बट सर रेड फ्लैग तो मतलब आई मीन आप समझ रहे हैं मैं क्या कहना चाह रही हूँ, वहां पे ऑडिटर ने
Yes.
पॉइंट आउट तो किया है उसको.
Correct. So if auditor has pointed out a particular red flag, perfectly fine. But it can be a scenario where auditor might have missed out two another red flags. So I cannot say that this only one red flag or two red flags reported in the audit report are correct. At times, trust me, what appears in investigation is not like that way. So let's say auditor highlighted a red flag. Okay, for example, with respect to ownership of the company. Hypothetical example, there is a red flag or there is an observation in the auditor's report that the management does not hold the title deeds of the properties, okay, in their name, in the company's name. But auditor never said that it is, auditor did not further go into further detail to analyze why it is not there, or whether it is not in the name of company, is in the name of directors, or there could be a lot of things. That half information is given in the audit report. If I rely on the audit report, if I take that half information, then it will decide or it will guide me the path. But sometimes it may happen that okay, auditor said that management doesn't have the title deeds of the property in the name of company. But what if the property is itself not there, or the property whose title deeds we are talking about, it's a fictional property, that's why they don't have the title deeds. So it is very subjective in nature that whether to rely or not. What is my subject matter? Even though it has been flagged by the auditor, I may not choose to rely because it can be half information.
ओके मतलब फ्रेशली स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा हमें इन्वेस्टिगेशन में सब कुछ.
Let's say auditor might have reported okay, there was a fraud in sales, but in actual it may happen that is not a sales fraud, it is fraud of some other nature, of some other amount. So always when your subject matter is your financial statements, even though it contains observation, don't. You have to go with a different approach. You cannot take that information. Yes, you will consider it as an evidence or as an information that you take up for the analysis, but it should not decide the way forward that how you need to go to the observation or how you need to do the investigation. And that comes to the next part is opinion. In investigation, we cannot issue speculative opinions. For example, that investigators suspects that there is a fraud. In my report, I cannot say that okay, I have a reasonable doubt that there is a fraud. When it comes to the opinion or reporting, I either have to say yes or no. That's it. There is no middle way. It might have happened, it may have happened, it might have been done like this way. No, not allowed. In an investigation, either say done or not done. Simple.
Got it, sir.
So this is how in actual the investigation, steps are involved. Any doubt with respect to this part?
No, sir.
Any doubt, guys? Anyone else? Okay. If no further doubts, what I propose here is in the next session, I will continue with the types of investigation. We'll go through some types of investigation from the non-statutory and the statutory both. We will go to the provisions of the Companies Act. I will talk about the provisions for the Companies Act, rules and all that which are related to the investigation. And then we will proceed for the forensic accounting part. Okay. What is
Sir,
yes.
10 minute का recap भी दीजिएगा.
Sure. Yes. So then we will proceed for the forensic accounting part in the next session. Okay. So we will also see fraud investigation, types of fraud. We will go to various types of fraud. I'll explain you some types of fraud. But what I expect from you guys is please read the chapter, because if you go to the chapter, no, you will see a lot of information being given in that. Okay. Various types of fraud, various information, various types of investigation. I want you guys to go through that, read it so that you can have a good understanding of the topic. And when I will discuss the type of investigations, fraud investigations, we will be able to, then you will be able to correlate that. Okay. So a quick recap of what we have discussed today. Basically, we started with the due diligence. Over there, we understood how and which are the parties which are involved in the due diligence. Target company, reviewers, stakeholders. Then we understood what is the purpose of due diligence, like what is the objective behind the due diligence. Okay, here we do the due diligence to make sure that the transaction or mergers or investment that is happening is, for that it is being done. That is the purpose, or for that is the objective of the due diligence. We discussed about the various types of due diligence: merger, acquisition, tax, financial, operations, IP, commercial, human resource, environmental, regulatory, customer. Okay. We also understood like what is buyer side due diligence, where buyer appoints the reviewer, or seller side due diligence. When seller, that is the basically, the company, the target company is appointing the due diligence reviewer. Okay. Then we understood various, steps that are involved in the due diligence. For example, I'll go back to the chapter. We understood, define how we do the due diligence. We first of all define the scope and objectives. Then we understand the subject matter. We do the planning, then we understand the subject matter. Then we perform the due diligence in detail, and it comes then the reporting part. Now, when it comes to the due diligence, it is very much different than the audit. The scope can be wide, the reporting can be very much different. We saw one example of the report also when it comes to the due diligence, that it is very, very detailed report. It involves everything, like why you are doing the due diligence, what was the approach, what was the scope, what you did in the due diligence, and what is the outcome. Unlike the just opinion in the audit report, here we have a detailed outcome of the corrective actions with the timelines and everything. Okay. So when you do a due diligence, your objective is not to identify or investigate, but your objective is to make sure you review everything. That's why we use the word review with the due diligence. It's a review. It's not a fact-finding analysis. I'm here not to identify whether the fraud is done or not. I'm here to identify observations, like whether this transaction can go ahead or not, whether this mergers can go ahead or not. Is there anything which can stop this merger from happening? Or whether whatever, circumstances or facts which are there in the agreement for the merger, acquisition, investment, they can be complied or not. So that is the objective of the due diligence. Rather, what we see in the investigation, or we will see that, fact finding, it is not fact finding, it is a detailed review. Okay. So that was, we understood about the due diligence. And then we discuss about the investigation. So any doubt with any of the part that we have discussed today?
No, sir.
Okay. If no doubts, then please read the chapter, guys. It's very, very important. Very important. Trust me. Okay. Read the chapter. And in the next session, I will continue with the types of investigation, and then fraud investigation and forensic accounting. Okay. So thank you, guys. Thank you for participating in today's session. I will see you in next session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Session over. Thank you. Good night.